Welcome to Conflict in the Workplace. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines conflict as competitive or opposing action of incompatibles, antagonistic state or action. So you can think of it this way. One person has positive feelings about something, while the other person has negative feelings about the same thing. We're going to talk about 4 causes of conflict. The first one being incompatible goals. So when we think of incompatible goals, we can look at 2 salespeople. Each have their own separate monthly sales goal that they have to hit. So what does that mean? That means every time a customer walks in, there is a silent, unspoken conflict between the 2 salespeople over who is going to help the customer and who is going to get the sale in order to hit their goal. The next one is different interpretations of facts. And I think about 2 lawyers sitting in a courtroom. Both have facts in front of them. The prosecutor is using the facts the way he sees them to say guilty. The defense attorney is using the same facts but interpreting them differently and saying not guilty. So again, same facts, different interpretation of them. Next will be behavioral differences. I think we can all agree that we all know somebody or have hung out with somebody that you just didn't get along with. Their behaviors were just either bizarre or over the top. And that conflict of, hey, I don't really like the way you're behaving, versus them saying, well, I don't like the way you're behaving, is a conflict. Now, you may never discuss it. You may just let the friendship go, but it's because of the behavioral differences. Unmet expectations happens all the time, and usually it's because there are unrealistic expectations put on people. So you're saying, here's what I expect from you, and you give them the list. The other person is saying, well, I get it, but I can't do all that. There's not enough time in the day. So you say yes, they say no. So there's going to be a conflict. Again, not every conflict is a outright yelling match. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is how positive conflict sounds. Oh, I can help you with that. Well, let's talk about that some more. I like that idea. Let's work out the details. I didn't think of it that way. Can you tell me more? In your opinion, are the consequences worth the risk? Oh, I'd love to hear your suggestions. So what are the pros and cons to that approach? So we just talked about what positive conflict sounds like. So imagine these 2 medical professionals are looking at this x-ray and they just do not agree on the results. Believe it or not, this is a conflict. There is no screaming, there will be no destructive behaviors, but what they're going to do is they're going to work together. Okay, they're going to collaborate and come up with alternatives, possibly asking each other for more information and giving each other solutions, going back and forth. So again, they're working together to solve the conflict that they see. Now that we've talked about positive conflict, let's talk about negative and how it sounds. No, that can't be done. I don't understand. Well, you should have done it this way. You understand, right? Well, that makes no sense. I don't have time for this. Really? That's your solution? You didn't do your homework on this, did you? So, obviously, my tone and the words that I'm using were very negative. So, what will happen if you have a conflict in the workplace and these are the words or this is the tone that you're using? it's going to make the conflict very dysfunctional. And now that you've learned a lot, do you guys think that this is the best way to handle a situation? Think about it. So here are a couple unprofessional ways to approach conflict. One is avoidance. When we ignore conflict, it's not going to solve itself. Conflict is not to be avoided, but resolved in a positive, professional manner. Competing. When we compete, it is merely a way of getting what we want, regardless of how it affects others. Now it's time to start resolving conflict. The first step is to prepare and plan. Always do your homework before trying to solve a conflict by negotiating. You need to know who's involved, what is their perception of the situation, what solution are you looking for, and what is your strategy going to be. Once that is done, it's time to define where the conversation will be, how long it will take, and who is going to be there. Make sure the individuals attending know what you would like to talk about before going into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, you should be able to make your point in a clear, concise way. Don't interrupt when the other person is talking. You may want to take notes in order to address the concerns later. This should not be a confrontation, but rather a discussion. So if you feel yourself getting worked up, take a deep breath. Remember, keep it professional. Once everybody knows what the other person wants, it's time to start bargaining or compromising, or someone just says outright no. But it's time to solve the problem. So I know what you want, you know what I want, so let's work it out. The final step is closure and implementation. So once you guys have come up with an agreement, it's time for closure, and you want to reiterate what you agreed on, and then you want to work on implementation. So then you get to work together to make the changes. Now let's talk about conflict resolution techniques. The first one is compromise. When each person involved is willing to give something up, they compromise. Accommodating is the willingness to place the opponent's interest before his or her own. And collaborating is when the parties involved work together to satisfy the concerns of everyone. Remember, functional outcomes is a result of the team working together to brainstorm ideas, to discuss those ideas, and then work together and decide which idea is the most feasible and obtainable. So in closing, conflict can be either productive or destructive. When resolving conflict, keep a level head. Think creatively and create opportunities for change. Important tips to remember. Don't avoid an issue. Okay? If you avoid something, it's only going to make it more difficult to work it out later down the road. The more you avoid things, the more negative emotions develop. So when it is finally time to address the problem, the possible disruption will outweigh the end result. When emergency decisions need to be made, make it. Emergency decisions are not always easy. That is why some people just don't make them. Although the resolution may be unpopular, it needs to be made. Listen to the person and collaborate together. Listening to the other party and working together to find an integrative solution is the best way to go. If there are negative feelings, work through them before the situation interferes with the relationship. When you are wrong, accept responsibility. So an adult can accept that they are not always right, and anyone who thinks they are, well, is wrong. Being able to accept responsibility for your actions will go a long way in your personal and professional life. If you are negotiating a point, but let's say you did the math wrong, acknowledge it and own it. Say, hey, now that I'm looking at this, it seems the math is incorrect. Let me rework it, and we'll continue this conversation when I have all true numbers. The employer wants to work with trustworthy, honest people. Number 5, be willing to compromise. You cannot always have everything that you want, so you must be willing to compromise. If there's something you don't really care about, don't spend 20 minutes trying to get your way. Just let it go. Know what your outcome is. So, remember to go into the meeting knowing the outcome you want. If you don't know what you want, you will get flustered and you'll come out of the meeting without being able to speak your mind.